I can't be your peace. I can't be your happiness. I can't be your resolve. I can't be your crutch. I cannot be anything more than the terms and conditions of my contract. I can't be your source for instant gratification. I simply only can be what it is that I am. The reflection of what needs to be assessed. Now, I can aid you on your path. I can be that ear but in order for that to happen, you have to comprehend your own conversation. This is the terms and the conditions. You can't be their peace, as we just opened up. You can't be their peace. What most of the times I realized that I searched for in others was a sense of instant gratification. Boil it down simple and plain. Grand Rising, bro. What I noticed with myself is I could be the go-to for the instant gratification. Whether it was positive or negative, I was in a role where I wanted to be instant gratification. I wanted to be more for the external to maintain my behaviors and how I was moving forward. A lack of structure. If I don't understand my structure, if I don't look back into the reflections of my structure, if I'm not studying and taking everything that's coming to me to help me get deeper into my structure, if I'm not allowing myself to sit in it, if I'm not allowing myself to dive into that sea of my emotions or allow myself to be deprived, allow myself to go into this deprivation, I can never see the roots to a lot of my mentalities. You're supposed to be assessing and learning. Sole purpose of many purposes. Anything that you do that will keep you in a state of that comfort zone. Remember, we've been talking about that comfort zone, and we're also going to get deep into that tomorrow night when we talk about those, talk about the delusion, the dissolving of the dissolutions, or trying to look for fault, or trying not to accept fault, or trying to put fault on other things. We're going to get deep into that tomorrow night. But a lot of times when we go into these spaces with ourselves, relationship, job, things of that narrative, when we get something from it, or we see a reflection of something from it, instead of us learning from it for the fear of actually having to go and assess some things, we allow that to be our flotation device. A lot of times I remember going into spaces with myself where I used others as a flotation device. That's what it meant by, that's when I think about somebody being my peace, or somebody being my happiness, or somebody being the love, or all of these aspects. It was always based on a sense of ownership. So naturally, everything I did would be in the catalyst or the terms and condition of ownership. So I wouldn't have to change my behavior. that fear of understanding myself to a deeper level. I've talked about it before. August 16th of last year, I married myself. I was in the depths of assessing and bringing my feminine energy online and understanding my masculine energy and doing that healing work. And I brought myself to a state of marrying myself, unifying the two aspects within inside of myself so I can fully be in that state. Assessing, but that came after assessing my needs and wants that were based in instant gratification versus my desire and my values. Now I can sit in a space, and when I have a conversation, I can display without the emotional aspect. I can listen without using the emotional filter. I can speak, I can comprehend without using an emotional filter to manipulate it to work for me. I'm not trying to bring anything into my space to make it keep working for me based on the old mentalities. Everything that I do is based in growth. Everything that I do is based in growth, shifting, and creating. I no longer want to be serving the old identities of myself inside of that space. I don't want to serve the old identities. I no longer want to be in a state of survival to adding something onto my plate that ultimately keeps me just above water. A lot of times when we're going into these spaces looking for peace, you're looking for these devices for the instant gratification to keep you above the water, to keep you reacting the same. A lot of the things that we do based in these actions will keep you above water. Really think about your right now. Where are you at right now? What are you doing right now? What is the state of the things that are inside of your space that you've created based in staying in that mental state, staying in that state? Peace. What is the current state? A lot of the things we have to, this is when you're going back and you're doing this assessing of yourself. What was the first time what was your first interaction that led you to having children? What was the first aspect what was the first route to you having to get a job? What was the first route of you getting your first place? What was the route based in? A lot of times it's based in survival. I remember my first place was based on survival. Honestly, the first place I ever got was based on survival. No longer wanted to adhere to the old terms and conditions that were inside of a space that were based in my avoidance, my neglect, rejection, guilt. I didn't want to live in that space anymore. But since I didn't assess, or I didn't know to assess that space, or me making this separation, because remember, the separation is sometimes needed, but what about the assessment in between? This is what happens a lot of time when we go into these spaces. And when things come into your space, people, places, all these things gravitate towards you. They're coming to you based on that survival complex. So now everybody around you is a survivor. But no one around you has a solution to step out of the realm of survival. So now someone comes into your space, an energy comes into your space, an entity comes into your space, and now it's here to show you what survival looks like. What you look like when you're trying to survive. It's trying to provide, it's teaching you structure. It's forcing you to go deep within inside of yourself. That's what everything outside of you is doing. When you're not looking at it as trying to be your peace, trying to be your happiness, trying to be your antagonist in situations. I remember being in whole situations where I would openly say in relationships like, hey, just make me the bad guy. Just make me the bad guy. Just tell them because that's what they were used to. They wanted me to accept that condition. This is what happened when you accept the conditions for someone else to be your peace. This is what happens when you accept the conditions, or people are used to accepting their conditions to be within that space. But the more that, the deeper that you get to know yourself, the less and less now you start questioning those conditions. You start questioning that structure. You start having that honest conversation. I can't have an honest conversation with you until I've had an honest conversation with myself. Because every time now I go into that space, if I'm not doing assessing, if I'm not learning, the only thing I'm going to hear is from the state of no or the maybe. I'm going to hear what I want to hear based on the terms and conditions of me staying in a certain emotional pace. I'm going to hear what I want to hear. I'm going to digest it based on what I hear and how I feel. I can ignore everything else because I didn't get the answer that matched this other answer. I'm stifled in my growth. I'm stifling in my growth. I'm used to receiving based on my old terms and conditions of that identity. Remember how I've talked about it before. As long as your shadows are still present in the past, everything that you do here in this current state is based on the necessity to feed those shadows, to keep those shadows fed. One of those examples becomes, think about the first relationship that you were in, or the first time that you went through an aspect and what was created based on that space. Me coming from a space where it was the two-parent household, and there was the two-parent household, everything that I saw was in the basis of a two-parent household. Arguments, it's okay to argue, but there was no assessing, there was no learning. It was always based on control. So what did I learn in all of my spaces? My terms and conditions were based on the control of the external aspect. So as long as I was making money, I ain't say shit. As long as everybody was making money and doing what they were supposed to do, the basic necessities, nobody said anything. But the moment that the money got short, or this wasn't being done, or that's not being done, or y'all not having sex and all that shit, that's the moment that everything seems to go in that chaotic state. Because now you questioning it, and guess how you question it? You only can question it based on your mindset, where you're at, what you've accepted. You only can answer based on that. This is what I'm always breaking down. It's time for you to let go, and why it's so important to let go of what it does, what it should be. That way you can understand the build. As I shifted with myself, I learned to move outside of a bias. I learned that it was not based on avoidance of things. I've learned that it's not based on avoidance. It's based on acceptance. It's based on really being honest with myself. It's based on moving past that point of fear of being rejected, fear of being abandoned. It was going through those points. Because I now realized that those old terms and conditions were only my emotional wounds. So now when I say something, I had a fear of changing what I said, or evaluating what I said, adding to it and investing into the change. Because I was stuck in that said identity. Everything that I've ever desired, I still desire. But it's outside of the realm of maintaining a behavior, maintaining a pattern. It's based on the depth of growth. It's based on me assessing my environment. If the environment does not match, or it's not fertile to what I'm trying to do, or what I'm creating into that space, then I'm not going to put myself into that space. I'm going to assess that space, whether it's the relationship, whether it's the job, whatever it is. I'm going to assess it and open myself up to learning what I need to learn inside of that space. I'm going to accept the changes without conditions. We have to get out of this state of accepting based on our condition. Like, we want to sit there and be like, but this was said and that was said. Okay. Now you brought it to the table. Now, this is what, after me going further into myself, because that's ultimately what you're saying, after me going further into myself, after me really evaluating my life, after the instances that happened up to this point, I made a decision. Here is my decision. Here is my plan. If you have a plan, let's bring our plans together, assess, and let's see what comes from that plan. But I have to let go of expectancy. I gotta let go of the expectation. Yes, you need to assess you gotta assess everything. Like, when you come into the state, that's what happens. That's what we're getting into. A lot of times we're looking at our needs and wants, and now we're shifting from I don't need or want anything, but now you have desires. You still got desires, but what are your desires? Your desires, if I ignore my needs and my wants, or assessing my needs and wants, then of course, when it comes to the chance when I'm in my self-love, when I'm in my value, and my values raised up of myself, when my desires come to the surface, remember, shifting from that state of my instincts based in survival, now I'm in peace, now I'm in love, now I'm in the higher aspects, openness, vulnerability. Now I have to assess my desires, and that's when my intuition is going to help me assess my desires. But it's only based on that level of openness to my access, to me assessing anything. I can't assess if I'm still stuck in the past. I still got a shadow dealing in the past. If I have not dealt with the traumatic experience, and it comes to the surface. If I have a whole damn dream that displays something that I need to really pay attention to, I have to sit in it. That's about sitting in it. The same way you sat in your needs and wants to assess those, the same way you got to sit inside your desires. Because your desires can be stuck in that residual. Your early desires can still be based in that residual based on urges that you haven't dealt with. The sexual urge, the urge to survive, the urge to be looked at a certain way, the urge for that instant gratification, those old terms and conditions. Remember, you're still in your contract. Exactly. Exactly. Urges and that lust, yeah. You have a shame. You can be sitting there with yourself and you can feel like you're ashamed for saying no to something because you're like, oh shit, I don't want it that way. I desire it not. I don't want to root something in something that's old of myself based in my desire, because that's what that's going to become. That's what that's going to become. I had to assess everything. You have to assess everything from your job, the relationships or those trauma bonds, how they're going to fit in. This is what it means. We're going to get deep into this tomorrow night. This is what it means to when you're creating your space. Everything that's in your space as of current, in this moment in time, in this example, in this context, what is it there for? What does it represent? What part of you does it represent? Does it represent the authentic aspects of you learning and growing, or does it represent the old aspects of that behavior? You staying in that survival mode. Everybody around you in survival mode. So the only conversations y'all can have is based in survival. The outlook of, ooh, they got a new event coming in. They giving out them tax credit checks for kids. But you've been owing taxes for the last 8-9 years. If you've been owing taxes for the last 8-9 years, then you're going to get that tax credit. Where do you think that tax credit is going to go? It's going to go to what you owe. That's the state of how your urges work. You get barely above the surface to a good point. Remember that land of neutrality, and you confuse neutrality with peace. You confuse neutrality with peace. You can't keep controlling. You can't keep thinking that I'm in the realm of neutrality or in the realm of assessment, because a lot of you, we come to that realm of assessment And we talked about it. We've been talking about it all week. As long as you can react to it, you in your comfort zone. As long as you can act out to it, you in your comfort zone. It's when you can no longer use the same lines. It's when that shit fall flat. You using one-liners. But I can do this because I did this. And you thought, before that used to work. It used to work when I said, well, I got a job. Well, I made this money. Well, I do this and I do that. Them one-liners used to work. When you were stuck in survival mode, them one-liners used to work. And then even with them one-liners that you thought you were using, that you thought were working, you got to think about the emotion that was behind it. You said, yo, but I do this, and you got really loud. So you thought because they didn't say anything, because that's what you're used to, because you still reflecting from a shadow in the past when you were sitting there and you were watching your mom and dad argue, and you remember your dad would get loud and your mom would get real quiet. So you thought that's how you would, you thought that was how you supposed to operate. Your mom left the house for whatever reason, and now you're sitting in that space trying to be your mother to your father. So now in every space that you go into, you mimic or you reflect based on the urge to be accepted, based on that urge or that lusting to be valid or to stay relevant within the space. Now you sitting in that space trying to maintain. Because these are the cycles that go through in your head. If my mom did this, this, and this, then my dad would still be here. If my mom did this, this, and this, she'd still be here. If my dad did this, this, and this, my mom would still be here. If my dad never did this to me, you got to be honest. If my dad or my stepdad or my stepfather, my dad, my uncle, the paternal figure, my mom's boyfriend didn't do what they did to me, then I would be a lot better off. But that's when you're trying. You got to stop. And this is what we're gonna get into deep tomorrow night. You got to stop trying to seek the annulment like it never happened. You got to stop trying to seek the annulment like it never happened. You got to stop trying to divorce yourself from your emotions or place looking for fault. It's time for you to come into that state of dissolution of the desolation of the disillusion. A dissolution, by definition in the business sense. Remember, you are a business, you are a brand, you are a business, a brand, you are a You are a business, you are a brand, you are a company, you're an LLC. So that same term for dissolution is the separating of the state, separating of a business from the state or the old state of being. That means I have to assess everything in my contract. It's time to get into your soul contract. Your soul contract, I'll give you some keys about the soul contract, some points we're going to get into tomorrow night. Your soul contract is the terms and conditions of your soul contract are found within your natal chart. The emotional points that are within your natal chart are found within your human design. So when you look at your human design chart, and we can talk about it, because we'll talk about it tomorrow night, get real deep into the different aspects. The human design chart, all the places when you look inside of a human design chart and the things that are blocked off, those are blocked off based on the terms and conditions in your natal chart. All those points in your natal chart where you saying, ooh, I'm a Taurus, so I'm a bull, or I'm an Aries, so I'm fire-headed. You're supposed to be learning that every time that's triggered, how to assess it. That's what that's there for. I can't sit in the realm of being an Aquarius and Aquarius sun and then saying, well, I'm supposed to be disassociated with everybody. I'm supposed to be learning how, because now I go look at my life path number and what it means. I look at my destiny number. That means I'm supposed to be getting into the higher terms of the contract in dealing with those things. You can't keep annulling. I'm going to annul that relationship like nothing happened. I'm going to divorce from that relationship or divorce. I'm going to put the blame on my identity. You knew what I was when you came in here. This is just the way that I am. You got to break those learned behaviors. You got to get to the source of it in the learned behavior with yourself. You still talking about slavery, but if everything's based in the emotional aspect or the memory, that means I'm being a slave to my emotions. So as long you still got a master, as long as somebody can make you react to some shit. Because you stuck in them terms and conditions of that contract. In order for you to stay that identity, stay that person, they got to keep doing what they doing. They got to keep saying what they saying. So now but now in your space, you got to filter up so you're not really hearing even what you're saying. I remember whole arguments and whole conversations, not really understanding what I was saying when somebody said it back to me. Because I was saying it through a high state of emotion. I was saying it through anger, sadness. I was saying it through the lower emotion. Remember that fear frequency distorts shit. So you get it all fast, you get it out there, you said it, and now you got to go back and look at it. This is when you got to stop. But you were my love, and you were my peace, and you were my happiness. No, I wasn't. I was teaching you peace. I was teaching you happiness. Even if we never had a happy day in our lives in our relationship, everything that came up in that space was teaching me about what not to look for or what not to connect to. What not to connect to and what not to keep myself locked in all the time. Or else I'm going to be stuck in that contract. That 360 deal. When the terms and conditions of that space have to be questioned in order to move forward, I'm not going to be able to hear the contract. I'm going to look for what I need to look for in order for me to keep reacting instead of truly becoming open to the space. It's time to shift in. Remember, I've said it before. Everything that triggers you is putting you into the terms of your contract, face to face with your contract. What do you want to do? You want to stay in the same space? Keep using the same learned behavior? What do you want to keep doing? You can't say that you want to change and then have conditions with it. You can't keep saying that I want to change, I want to get better, I want to evolve, I want to come more into myself, but you got conditions to it. But these are my conditions. I don't want to change the way I view my family. I don't want to change the way I view my friends. I don't want to change the way I view my baby mother and my baby father. I don't want to change that. Because those are the points in the contract that you're going to ignore and not have the conversation with. Those are the points of assessment. Those are the moments of assessment. That's why I said, remember we said it last night in the show. That separation is needed. But what are you doing in that state of separation? Even if you fall into that state of separation because of a high emotional catalyst, motherfucker is manipulative, a motherfucker is evil and mad. What are you assessing inside of that space? Not based on protecting your energy and avoiding, seeking an annulment, trying to seek to be right or wrong, don't matter. There was whole conversations that I remember having where I thought I was right or wrong. I was trying to be right. And when I was wrong, I was trying to be right. So I was like, yeah, but I was right. You got to admit that I was right. Everything that they said, now I'm looking to be right. I'm looking for them to prove me right. So I'm looking for that validation for them to prove me right. All that's going to do in looking for that is making sure that that motherfucker stays in my space. It gives them another reason to be around. It gives them another reason to stay. Because they gave me something that I'm not willing to give. I'm not strong enough to give to myself. You keep accepting those old terms and conditions. This is what happens when you think you're trying to be somebody's peace before you want to evaluate your peace and your emotional intelligence. You'll always be separated away from yourself because you become a piece or you become under ownership because they have that emotional catalyst in their catalog. So now you mad because you keep getting in toxic situations, in narcissistic situations, and motherfuckers treating you bad, and motherfuckers disrespecting you because they own that piece of your contract. You gave that to them. Whether you want to admit it or not, I remember giving everybody pieces of that damn contract. Hey, you're this, you're this, you're this. Everybody had a purpose. Everybody was a crutch. So now I can keep going out into these spaces doing the same thing. But when I have to start assessing these aspects and I get barely above water, this is what happens in a lot of relationships. You get barely above water, you can see your shoulders, so you can see your reflection. You try to maintain this reflection that you see right above water. They made you feel good. They talked you away. No one's ever talked to you. But you try to maintain this reflection. This reflection only stays current to the current of the emotions that you understand. So if I'm above that water right here, and I'm trying to maintain this reflection, but I don't understand, I'm not assessing my emotions, I have to accept everything. You're going to ultimately have to accept everything that comes into your space. But if I'm always in a state of expectancy, based on what was said in the beginning, and even if somebody tells you, yeah, it changed, this is my new idea, I'm doing this, this, and this. We're going to still do that, but we got to look at it from a different way. Now you got to accept that perspective change. Remove those conditions. You got to understand that you know the things that I've been through in my life. All I'm trying to do is give myself this state of peace. And okay, you're not going to get it that way. It's time to change that perspective. That predestination based on what you used to be, it ain't working no more. You thinking like, okay, cool, I did this and I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. What lesson? What's the formula? What was the game plan for that? Did you do that through a state? What emotional catalyst was used to bring that into your space? If you ain't assessing that, then how you gonna move forward? If I'm not assessing my emotions that I'm putting into that space, or the emotional development and the blockages and the shit I'm not dealing with, if I'm not dealing with those aspects when I step into a space and I have a conversation, then all I'm going to look for is those same emotional aspects inside of that space. They said no. You still living off the no. You still living off the no in correspondence to when your mother told you, when you told your mother what happened to you when you were little, and that no that hit you, and you still acting in that no. Now you feel separated from men. Now you feeling separated from women. Now you separated from that state because of that first no, from that first state of being. Now you stuck in that space. Now every time something comes up to trigger you to go sit in that space, you want to react to it to stay in your comfort zone. But you got to understand, I've been doing this and this and this. I'm in a state of building. I had to become real honest with myself. You're going to have to become real honest and allow yourself to be deprived of the instant gratifications based on your identity. It's nice that you got the crib. It's nice that you got a car. It's nice that you got a job. But everything's going to be based on the salary that you based into yourself. It only can give you based below. You're always going to get below net worth. You always going to get based on your net worth. You never going to get the gross. It don't matter how much work you put into this. This just came through. Think about it like this. All the work that you put in, no matter what you put in, you'll never get the gross. Because if you don't own the emotions that are used to make that space, you'll always be stuck in the net. That net amount. That means you're going to sit there and for the equivalent, you work 40 hours, 50 hours at your job, and you got some money, you got what you needed to get. Now you got to look at that in the same aspect and reflection of how you treat your life. You sitting there, but I want to do, no. You can't keep using that as you're using that as your emotional catalyst. That's your salary. That salary's capped off by your emotions. Your fear to move forward. Your fear of what you built. Everything that we do will always be behind the current. Everything that you do based in survival mode is behind the current. Every event that you look at will keep you behind the current. You're always behind the current. You're always behind your emotions. Your emotions play the foreground. So everything that you know is being filtered through those emotions. Woo. But we're going to get deep into that tomorrow night when we get into dissolution of the dissolving dissolutions. Friday night lectures, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Occult Alchemist is the YouTube channel. Link been up all week. Blessings, blessings, blessings. We're going to be getting into that. We're going to be getting into these deep aspects of your soul contract. Research, assessing, we're going to be getting really deep. You know, every Friday we get deeper and deeper. Bring yourself. It's time to assess and learn. You can't want the same things. You can't keep basing your life on what happened to you in the 7th grade. Whatever happened to you in the 7th grade, you're still living through it. It's okay. Time to assess it. Everything in your space act childish because you're still stuck in the 7th grade. You're still stuck in the 8th grade. You're still stuck in that event. Especially if you haven't dealt with it. You ain't brought it to the surface. Everything's going to be created to trigger you into that event. Time to let go. Everything from readings, natal chart analysis, human design chart. The class is coming in September for the full human design aspect. Setting up that shadow consultation to see how deep we need to go, whether it's based in shadow therapy, the shadow therapy sessions, or the life coaching and the mentoring and that skill set that's depending on where you at and where we need to go. All of that's available. Hit me up in the inbox. Hit me at setcallonnesus@gmail.com. Hit me at 910-249-3999. Let's set that up. I can't make you ready. Nobody can make you ready. You got to be ready for it. You feeling fear? Remember, if you can react to it, you're going to be like, I want to get out of my comfort zone. That's what you do based on the state of reaction. It's time to inform and respond. It's time to learn your design. I'll see y'all tomorrow. I love you. We love us. Ashe.